The religious leaders in Israel hated Jesus because he taught his disciples and all the people not to obey their rules and not to follow their traditions. When Jesus was growing in popularity with the people, the scribes and Pharisees came from Jerusalem all the way to Capernaum in the north on the Sea of Galilee, and they asked Jesus why his disciples would eat bread with defiled, unwashed hands, and they condemned him for this. Jesus immediately responded that the prophet Isaiah spoke correctly about them, that they were hypocrites because they teach man-made traditions as though these were the very words of God, and they make them even more important than the scriptures themselves. During the time of Jesus, the traditions and duties to God within Israel were determined by the religious leaders. And if the people did not follow them, they were cast out of the synagogue and even out of society. When it came to washing hands, the rules were so meticulous that they became too big of a burden for anyone to follow. For example, before every meal and after every meal, they had to wash their hands with somebody else pouring the water. The water had to equal at least the amount of 1.5 eggshells, and it had to be poured onto both hands, which were lifted up so that the water was dripping down upon the wrist to make sure that the whole hands and fingers were washed. If they came from the marketplace, they had to wash their whole body, and this became a legal duty, and neglect to do so was a crime unto death, and neglecting to wash after one has eaten was, quote, as bad as a murderer, close quote. There were rules about washing the cups, the pots, the vessels, and even the tables, and much more. These traditions were taught as God's rules by the eminent teachers of Judaism. We know by hindsight that these volumes of traditions have all been neatly organized into what is commonly called the Talmud, which adds, quote, "My son, give more heed to the words of the rabbis than to the words of the law." They came to condemn Jesus, but it was Jesus who condemned them for their man-made rules. He finished by saying to everyone listening, "If any man has ears to hear, let him hear." Mark 7:16.